high noise levels have a significant impact on Europeans' health, especially those living in urban areas. A recent study by an European court draws attention to the risks of neglecting this type of pollution that causes premature deaths. The shortcomings of the Environmental Noise Directive are at the heart of this episode of eu-decoded.
More than 30% of the European population is exposed to noise levels that are harmful to humans. The young are the most sensitive, with more than 60,000 children in Europe suffering from cognitive and learning problems. Prolonged exposure to harmful noise can cause cardiovascular, metabolic and mental health diseases.
A report by the European Court of Auditors released in January highlights the lack of EU-wide noise reduction targets. It also points out that many countries have lax monitoring. We took some soundings on the issue from European streets.
Σίγουρα είναι ενοχλητικό, θα πρέπει να υπάρξει μια πρόληψη και συγκοινωνιακά συνολικά καλές συγκοινωνίες, ας πούμε, ώστε ο κόσμος να χρησιμοποιεί λιγότερο αυτοκίνητα, περισσότερα μέσα μεταφοράς, ώστε αυτό να μειωθεί.
Κατά της συγχωρήπανσης, σίγουρα θα μπορούσε να πάρει κάποια μέτρα, θα μπορούσε να μειώσει σίγουρα τα decibel τα οποία παράγουν οι εξατμίσεις κατά μεγαλύτερο ποσοστό λόγω καλύτερης τεχνολογίας.
A lot of people make a lot of complaints about the planes that pass, and they put posters, they do protests and stuff, and I think they should work with this, with the planes, to be honest, to put some noise cancelling thing.
Les animaux sont plus affectés, je pense, que nous. Et certainement que peut-être mettre des capteurs ou des choses qui permettent de réguler un peu, ça ferait pas de mal en tout cas, certainement.
Quand je me réveille le matin, sous le bruit des klaxons dans ma rue, c'est des choses qui peuvent influer sur mon moral durant la journée, et sur ma vie à long terme.
With us is Robert Hodgson, which follows the EU's environmental policy. The Environmental Noise Directive has been in place for over 20 years and has not been revised since then. Has this led to inaction from many member states on this issue?
The reason for inaction from member states might be more to do with the fact that there are no binding targets in the directive. So member states are required to produce plans, they're required to monitor the level of noise in the busier parts of their road network and in cities. But beyond that, reporting that to the Commission, they don't actually have to do anything from an EU perspective. So the result has been we found governments have been reluctant even to produce these noise maps on time. So there have been a number of cases where the Commission's been forced to take countries to court or threaten legal action.
We know that the transport sector is one of the main sources of noise pollution, and the European Commission has set a new target on this. What is the proposal?
They set a target to reduce the number of people chronically affected by noise pollution by 30% by the end of this decade. They also said that they might look into reviewing the directive and setting a binding target if they deem it necessary, but so far nothing has been done in that regard. The new Commission told the European Court of Auditors that they accept their recommendations, and they said that they would continue with this intention to review the directive, and they said by 2029 they'll decide whether or not it needs to be updated or not.
And finally, are there any sanctions to member states that do not act on noise pollution?
There are sanctions if they don't comply with the directive, as there are for any EU directives. But the directive doesn't actually require them to reduce noise levels. It just requires them to identify them and put forward plans, but they're not legally binding. So France last year was referred to court for failing to produce this map. And I think October last year, another 6 countries were also warned that if they don't, they might be on their way to court. Greece, Romania, several other countries.
According to the World Health Organization, noise levels are considered excessive when they exceed 53 dB, a lower bar than the 55 dB threshold set by the European Union. Road traffic is the main source of noise pollution, 80%, followed by rail traffic, 15%, and air transport, 1%. Austria, Cyprus, Czechia, France and Luxembourg are the EU member states with the highest percentage of urban residents exposed to excessive noise. 15 of the 27 member states have failed to prove data on noise pollution as required by the EU directive.
With us is Peter Ajus, a centre-right MEP from Malta that has backed a citizens' petition to have more action on noise pollution. It seems that the political action against noise pollution has been neglected compared, for instance, on action on air pollution. What should the EU do to reverse this?
Where we need to find a better balance between commercial activity and the noise it produces, and our residents' rights to live in peace. We need a better monitoring system and clearer provisions on what amounts to noise pollution and what are the specific obligations of member states. So there are definitions which are sometimes vague and interpreted in different ways in different member states.
Are there any concrete measures that could be effective in protecting people from noise pollution, and how expensive will they be?
Yeah, the directive already in place does establish the notion of what is harmful to citizens, what is annoying to citizens, and it already established the notion of having thresholds of noise levels. So it's all a question of now implementing these requirements. And yes, we need more resources, we need more empowerment to local authorities, especially enforcement authorities, to be able to judge where we have a breach.
And finally, is there a role to be played by the private sector, namely transport, in reducing noise and pollution?
Absolutely. I think it is part of our drive for corporate social responsibility, especially for bigger companies, because we need to be reasonable, okay? When it comes to SMEs, family enterprises, there's so much you can do. But if you are a bigger company, yes, I think it is something nice to invest and to try to reduce noise pollution. But also from a public policy perspective, we must encourage, we must empower private undertakings to be able to take more initiatives in this regard.
Noise pollution also has serious impacts in biodiversity and ecosystems, but clear guidelines are lacking, says the European Court of Auditors. This is yet another flaw on the EU's plan to hit the zero pollution target by 2030. Experts warn that without more ambitious measures, the number of people that will suffer from noise pollution could even increase.